It was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday afternoon. 8-year-old Emily sat in the back seat of her mother's car, humming along to the music as they pulled into the bustling supermarket parking lot. She was already thinking about the chocolate chip cookies her mom had promised they would bake later. But as they cruised slowly through the rows of cars, something unusual caught Emily's sharp eyes. There, near the entrance where old shopping carts were haphazardly stacked together, sat a large German shepherd, tucked awkwardly into one of the carts. His fur was dusty and slightly matted, his ears drooping low with exhaustion. Even from the car, Emily could see the sadness in his deep brown eyes. He wasn't barking or whining, he was just waiting. "Mom, stop the car," Emily cried out, pressing her small hands against the window. Startled, her mother hit the brakes and followed Emily's gaze. She frowned when she saw the dog. "Oh no, that poor thing," she murmured. Before her mother could say another word, Emily had unbuckled her seatbelt and was pushing open the door. She sprinted toward the cart, heart pounding in her chest. The closer she got, the more she could see. The dog was skinny, like he hadn't eaten properly for days, and his paws were curled tightly under him in the cramped space. Emily slowed her steps as she approached, remembering what her parents had taught her about being careful with strange dogs. She knelt down a few feet away and spoke gently. "Hey there, buddy. It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." The German shepherd lifted his head slowly. His ears gave a tiny twitch, and to Emily's amazement, his tail gave a soft, cautious wag. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just looked at her, as if measuring whether he could trust this small human who had come to find him. Other shoppers bustled by, some glancing briefly at the scene, but most ignored the dog altogether. A few whispered to each other, shaking their heads, but no one stopped. Emily felt her heart break a little more with every passing second. She turned and looked at her mother, who had caught up and was standing a few feet behind her. "Mom, we can't leave him here," Emily said, her voice trembling. "He's waiting for someone, but they're not coming back, are they?" Her mother hesitated, her face clouded with worry. But when she looked into her daughter's tearful eyes, and then at the abandoned shepherd, she knew they couldn't walk away either. Not today. Emily stayed crouched near the cart, speaking in a soft, soothing voice. Every few words, the German shepherd's tail thumped gently against the metal frame, a small but clear sign that he understood she meant no harm. His body trembled slightly, whether from fear or the chill in the air. Emily wasn't sure. All she knew was that he needed someone, and right now, that someone was her. Slowly, Emily stretched out her hand, palm up, the way she had seen on animal rescue shows. "It's okay, boy. You're safe now," she whispered. For a moment, the dog hesitated. His big brown eyes locked onto hers, searching for something, trust, maybe, or a tiny thread of hope. After what felt like forever, he inched his nose forward and gave her fingers a cautious sniff. Emily held perfectly still, her heart soaring. Then, very carefully, she reached out and scratched behind his ear. The German shepherd closed his eyes and leaned into her touch. Emily glanced over her shoulder at her mother, who was still standing nearby, watching the scene unfold. Her mother's expression had softened, the lines of worry fading slightly. Emily gave her a hopeful smile, and her mother nodded, though she still looked unsure. Several people walked past, tossing curious looks their way. One man muttered something about just a stray and kept moving. Emily's chest tightened with anger. This dog wasn't just a stray. He was someone's pet. Someone who had trusted people once. Maybe still did, even after being left behind. "I think he's waiting for someone," Emily said aloud, turning her attention back to the shepherd. "He thinks they're coming back for him." Her mother sighed. "Maybe he's just scared, sweetheart. Maybe he's not ready to move." But Emily shook her head. She could feel it, deep in her bones. The dog wasn't staying in that cart because he was afraid to move. He was staying because he believed he was supposed to wait there, because someone he loved had put him there and told him to stay. She blinked back the sting of tears. "Mom, we have to do something," she whispered. Her mother glanced around the parking lot, clearly weighing the situation. "Let's ask inside the store if anyone reported a missing dog," she finally said. "Maybe someone's looking for him." Reluctantly, Emily stood up. The German Shepherd whined softly when she moved away, his ears perking up, his whole body shifting as if he was afraid she would leave him too. "I'll be right back, I promise," Emily said, placing her hand gently on his head before hurrying after her mother. And even though she was gone for only a few minutes, to the lonely dog in the shopping cart, it must have felt like an eternity. Inside the supermarket, the air smelled of freshly baked bread and sweet fruit, but Emily hardly noticed. She clutched her mother's hand tightly as they approached the customer service desk near the entrance. The woman behind the counter looked up with a kind but tired smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. Emily's mother cleared her throat. "We found a German Shepherd outside. He's in a shopping cart near the front door. Has anyone reported a missing dog today?" The woman's smile faded a little. She shook her head. "No missing dog reports. But you're not the first to ask about him." Emily's ears perked up. "Who else asked?" she blurted out. The woman leaned closer and spoke in a quieter voice. "Security told me he was dropped off this morning, around sunrise. We checked the cameras. A car pulled up, someone got out, and they lifted the dog right into the cart. Then they just drove away." Emily's stomach twisted into a knot. She squeezed her mother's hand tighter. "Did you see what the car looked like?" her mother asked. The woman nodded sadly. "A dark-colored SUV, but the license plate was too blurry to make out. We called animal control, but they said it might take a day or two before anyone can pick him up." Emily felt her heart sink lower. A day or two. The dog was sitting outside right now, vulnerable and confused, waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. As they turned to leave, Emily caught sight of the reflection in the store's glass doors. The German Shepherd was still in the shopping cart, exactly where she had left him. His eyes followed her, full of quiet hope, and his tail thumped once against the side of the cart. Back outside, the winter sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot. A chilly breeze made Emily shiver, but she barely noticed. Her heart ached as she jogged back to the cart, afraid he might somehow be gone. But he was still there, still waiting. Emily knelt beside him again and reached out her hand. The German Shepherd pushed his nose into her palm, this time without hesitation, letting out a soft, breathy sigh. "He's been abandoned, hasn't he?" Emily whispered to her mother, though deep down she already knew the answer. Her mother crouched beside her and placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. "It looks that way, sweetheart." Emily looked up at her, determination blazing in her young eyes. "Then we have to help him. Please, Mom. He needs us." For a moment, her mother didn't speak. She just looked at Emily, then at the dog, and then back at her daughter, seeing not just a little girl begging for a stray, but a heart wide open and full of fierce, unshakable kindness. She sighed, finally nodding. "Okay, let's bring him home." Emily could hardly believe it. Her heart raced with excitement as her mother pulled the car closer to where the shopping cart stood. The German Shepherd lifted his head, ears perking up when he saw them returning. His tail gave a slow, steady wag, the first real sign of happiness Emily had seen from him. "We'll need to be careful," her mother said, glancing around the parking lot. "He might be scared in the car." Emily nodded, determined to do everything right. She approached the cart once again, speaking softly, her voice full of reassurance. "It's okay, boy. We're going to take you somewhere safe." The dog shifted slightly, standing up on unsteady legs. He didn't try to jump out. Instead, he waited, trusting Emily's gentle touch. Carefully, with her mother's help, Emily guided him out of the cart. He was heavier than she expected, but he didn't struggle. It was as if he understood that this was his chance. Once in the car, the shepherd curled up in the back seat, resting his head on the seat cushion. Emily slid in next to him, lightly resting her hand on his thick fur. His body trembled a little, but he didn't move away. Every now and then, he peeked up at her with big, uncertain eyes, and each time, Emily smiled and whispered, "You're safe now." On the way to the veterinary clinic, Emily's mother made a few quick phone calls. The local shelters were all full, and no one could take him immediately. Some even suggested leaving him overnight at animal control until space opened up. Emily clutched the dog closer at the thought. There was no way she was going to leave him somewhere cold and lonely again. She pressed her forehead gently against his and whispered, "I promise, I won't let you be alone anymore." When they arrived at the clinic, the shepherd hesitated before stepping out of the car. Emily didn't rush in. She waited patiently until they decided to follow her, taking slow, cautious steps toward the front door. The staff inside welcomed them warmly. A kind vet technician knelt down and spoke sweetly to the dog, offering him treats, which he sniffed before gently taking from her hand. The vet gave him a full examination, checking for injuries or signs of illness. "He's underweight," the veterinarian said after a thorough checkup. "And he's been through a lot, but with some care and love, he'll be just fine." Emily beamed at the news. Her mother filled out the paperwork, listing their home as his temporary residence. For now, at least, the German Shepherd would have a warm bed, a full belly, and most importantly, someone who loved him. As they left the clinic, Emily wrapped her arms around the dog's neck and whispered, "Welcome home, buddy." And for the first time all day, the German Shepherd wagged his tail with real, honest joy. The first few days at home with the German Shepherd were filled with careful steps and small victories. Emily had named him Max the very first night, after her favorite storybook hero, a brave soul who always found his way home, no matter how lost he got. At first, Max seemed unsure of everything. Every sudden noise made him flinch. Every fast movement caused him to lower his head, bracing for something that never came. Emily quickly learned to move slowly around him, speaking in soft tones and offering him treats whenever he approached her on his own. Max found a corner in the living room where he liked to curl up, his back pressed safely against the wall, his eyes always watching. Emily placed a soft blanket there and left a few of her stuffed animals nearby. Bit by bit, Max accepted these small offerings, nudging a teddy bear with his nose one afternoon and falling asleep next to it by evening. Emily's mother was amazed of the bond growing between the two. Every morning before school, Emily would sit cross-legged near Max, reading stories out loud. She wasn't sure if Max understood the words, but his tail would tap the floor every time she said his name, and that was enough. Still, there was something Emily noticed that puzzled her. Every evening, as the sky darkened and the world grew quiet, Max would walk to the front window. He would sit there silently, his body still, his eyes focused out onto the street, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. "Who are you waiting for, Max?" Emily would whisper, sitting beside him. Max would move. His gaze remained fixed outside, sometimes for hours. He didn't seem sad, exactly, more like he was holding on to hope that someone from his old life might return. Emily felt a heavy ache in her chest each time she watched him. She had given him a new home, a new blanket, new toys, and endless love. But Max's heart still had a small piece missing, a piece Emily couldn't quite reach. Even so, she didn't give up. Every day, she worked to build his trust, showing him through actions that he was safe now. She taught him simple games, tossing a ball gently across the room and cheering when Max fetched it back. She sang psalms while brushing his thick fur, careful not to tug too hard when she found tangled patches. And every night, before she went to bed, Emily would kneel beside Max at the window, wrapping her arms around his big, warm body and promising, "I'm right here. No matter what, I'll be right here." Max didn't turn his head, but his tail would give one quiet, grateful thump against the floor. And that was enough. For now. It was on a chilly Thursday evening, nearly 2 weeks after Max had come home with them, that Emily discovered the clue that would change everything. She was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, brushing Max's thick, shaggy fur. It had become their little nightly routine. Emily would talk softly about her day, and Max would relax under her careful touch, his eyes half closed in contentment. That night, as she brushed behind his ear, Emily felt her fingers catch on something rough tucked under his collar. Curious, she set the brush down and carefully unfastened the old, faded collar Max still wore. She had been meaning to replace it, but somehow it had always felt wrong to take away the one thing he had brought with him from his old life. As she turned the collar over in her hands, she noticed a small metal tag tucked into a hidden loop on the inside. The surface was scratched and worn, almost impossible to read, But if she squinted hard enough, she could make out part of the phone number and a few faded letters that looked like a name. "Mom," Emily called out, her voice sharp with excitement. Her mother came quickly, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. When she saw what Emily was holding, she crouched down beside her. "What did you find?" "There's a number," Emily said, her hands trembling just a little. "Maybe it's his real owner." Her mother's eyes softened. She took the collar gently from Emily and squinted at the tiny numbers. Part of it was too faded to read, but enough remained to take a chance. Without hesitating, she grabbed her phone and carefully dialed the number. Emily sat frozen beside Max, who was now wide awake, his ears perked toward the sound of the ringing. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, click, a voice, tired and trembling, answered. "Hello." Emily's mother cleared her throat. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I found a German Shepherd a few weeks ago, and we just discovered an old tag with this number. I was wondering, did you lose a dog?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Emily's heart hammered in her chest. Finally, the woman on the phone gasped, Max is alive." Tears sprang to Emily's eyes instantly. She looked down at Max, who was now standing, his whole body tense, as if he somehow knew that something important was happening. The woman's voice cracked with emotion. "I've been looking everywhere for him. Please tell me he's okay." Emily's mother smiled through watery eyes. "He's more than okay," she said softly. "He's safe, and I think he's been waiting for you." The next afternoon, Emily could hardly sit still. Her legs swung restlessly beneath the kitchen chair as she watched the clock tick away the minutes. Outside, the sky was clear and blue, and the whole house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the knock they had been promised. Max sensed something too. He paced the hallway, his nails clicking softly on the floor, stopping every few seconds to peer out the front window. His body was tense, his ears forward, as if every fiber of his being knew that today was different. Finally, a soft knock sounded at the door. Max froze for a heartbeat, then barked once, a sharp, hopeful sound. Emily raced to the door, her heart pounding, and threw it open. Standing there was a woman in her early 60s, her face lined with worry and hope all at once. She wore a thick jacket and clutched a worn leash in her hands. Her eyes, bright with unshed tears, immediately found Max. "Max," she breathed, her voice breaking. Max stared for a second, confused. Then, in an instant, he lunged forward, not in fear, not in hesitation, but with pure, unstoppable joy. His whole body wiggled, and he let out a sound that was somewhere between a bark and a whimper. He pushed his head into the woman's chest as she dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms tightly around him. "My sweet boy, you're alive. You waited for me," she sobbed, pressing her face into Max's fur. Emily watched, her own eyes stinging with tears. Her mother stepped forward, gently guiding Emily aside to give them space. It took several minutes before the woman could even speak properly. When she finally looked up at Emily and her mother, her hands still buried in Max's fur, her voice was thick with gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you for saving him." Emily shook her head. "He saved me too," she whispered. The woman smiled sadly. "Max was my husband's dog. They were inseparable. After my husband passed away, I couldn't take care of Max the way he deserved. My son," she hesitated, pain flashing across her face. "My son promised he would help. I trusted him. I didn't know he would leave Max like that." She hugged Max tighter. "I never stopped looking. I called every shelter, every clinic. I was afraid I had lost him forever." Emily's mother stepped forward kindly. "He's been waiting. Every night he would sit by the window like he was waiting for someone." The woman's eyes filled again. She nodded. "He was waiting for me." Max licked her cheek, tail thumping against the ground with all the happiness he could give. Emily smiled through her tears, knowing that sometimes love could find its way home, even after being lost for a while. After the tears had been shed and the story shared, the question hung quietly between them all. What would happen to Max now? Emily sat cross-legged on the living room rug, nervously twisting the hem of her sweater. Max rested beside her, his head in her lap, His body relaxed for the first time in what felt like forever. The woman, Mac's original owner, sat across from them, her eyes full of gratitude but also sadness. "I want to do what's right for Max," she said softly. "He's been through enough." Emily's mother leaned forward, her voice gentle. "You're his family. We don't want to stand in the way of that." The woman smiled, the tears shimmered in her eyes. "Family is more than just blood. It's about who's there when you need them most. And Max, he's found that with you." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She looked down at Max, who gazed up at her with pure trust shining in his deep brown eyes. "You mean?" Emily whispered. The woman nodded, reaching out to stroke Max's head. "If you'll have him, I'd love for Max to stay here with you. You gave him hope again. You gave him back his heart." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, and she threw her arms gently around Max's neck. He barked once, a bright, happy sound, and licked her cheek. It was as if he understood every word. They'd all laughed through their tears, the room filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with the heating vent humming in the corner. In the days that followed, everything changed, and everything stayed wonderfully the same. Emily and Max became inseparable. They took long walks in the park, where Max would proudly trot beside her, his head held high. Emily taught him new tricks, and Max, in turn, taught her patience, kindness, and the beauty of second chances. The woman visited often, bringing treats for Max and hugs for Emily. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a new kind of family being built, one stitched together with love, trust, and quiet promises. Every evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with streaks of pink and gold, Max would still sit by the front window. But now he didn't watch with longing. He sat there proudly, Emily curled up beside him, watching the world with the heart of someone who knew he was finally, truly home. And every time someone asked Emily about Max's story, she would smile and say, "He waited for love to find him again." And it did.